All right, Citadel football fans, we welcome you to another edition of the Coach Brent Thompson radio show, and this will actually be the final version for the year. The head coach is alongside. I'm your host, Mike Legg. Thank you very much for being alongside tonight. And we are live from Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue downtown at 126 Williman Street is the location for us this evening. And whether you're listening in the car or by radio at home or watching on YouTube or here in our audience, we welcome you to the program. And for the next hour, we will talk about Citadel football. We will recap the game that just happened against the opponent for the Citadel Bulldogs, the Western Carolina Catamounts. And we will also look ahead a little bit to the game this weekend when the Furman Paladins will play host to the Citadel Bulldogs. Head coach Brent Thompson alongside. As always, Coach, good to have you here. And we look forward to the next hour talking about your program. I've got an awful lot of things to ask about, maybe even some things outside the box. It's the last show of the season for us, and so maybe even looking ahead a little bit. So, again, thanks for your time. Good to have you.
Thanks, Mike. Always a pleasure. I look forward to having a good discussion here today.
So let's get it going here. The Citadel Bulldogs over the past weekend hosted Western Carolina, one of the teams in the league that was really down a year ago that turned itself around a little bit. You've told me many times, Coach, you talk about how the league can be run in cycles. It is hard for the same team to be at the top all the time, no matter how much people would like for teams to be at the top, their fan bases, of course. And Western Carolina kind of proves that to a degree. This was a team that was down a year ago, but they turned their fortunes around a little bit. Talk about how they turned themselves around a little bit.
Well, it's always been a talented team. They're very talented, and they've got very explosive players on offense. I think they've got one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the league, in Detrez Newsome, and that kind of showed up. We're a pretty good rush defense, and we still gave up over 200 yards to them, which is quite a bit. And then you throw on the quarterback on top of that. Tyree Adams does a great job. He's got a terrific arm. He can make you miss. He runs extremely well, and a great competitor because you know that he was injured the week before, and he came back and had a great week. And then they've got one more wide receiver, I think. So they spread you out in three different ways, and they can move the ball around in those three different ways, and they can move it fairly quickly. So we had to keep him off the field as much as we possibly could.
Tyree Adams, their quarterback, you mentioned him. Going into the week, we knew he was probably less than 100%, but that he was going to try to go. Did you feel like maybe they kept him in the pocket to protect what might be ailing him? Although in the second half, he ran a little bit more, it seemed.
What I thought they did was they established the run with Detrez first, and they kept on feeding it to him, and they got the ball out of the hands of Tyree pretty quickly as they were throwing the short intermediate routes. They were getting the ball down the field, and that was evident in the first drive. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot of running until the second half. Like you said, they caught a couple of quarterback traps in there, quarterback draws in there, a couple of read plays in there. They didn't do a whole lot with him, but he didn't seem to have any problems from whatever was ailing him the week before. I thought he played extremely well.
Tyree Adams and Western Carolina get the win in the ball game, 31-19. We'll recap it all coming up in just a little bit here as the Bulldogs are prepared to take on Furman on the road this weekend. How about you from an injury, illness standpoint? What can you say about what this weekend will hold there?
Well, we probably have the most that we've had out. Colley's kind of a little bit still day-to-day. We are trying to get him back phased into practice. He tried to go on Saturday, couldn't go, but a handful of snaps. So we're still trying to get him ready to go. And then same thing with Josh LeBlanc. Still trying to get him ready to go and see if we can't get him ready to play. But we're fully prepared to play without both those guys.
Is Kylie Williams one of those guys that almost refuses to stay on the sideline? Does he kind of try to talk his way in there?
Absolutely. He's a football player, and he's in his last couple of games here. We want to try to get him in there as best we can. And I know if he's able to go, he will definitely go.
So Kylie Williams, Josh LeBlanc, things to look forward this particular week. Lots of things to get to with Coach. We're going to recap this game against Western Carolina on the other side of the timeout, which we'll take right now. And when Coach and I come back, we'll dive right in to the Western Carolina Catamounts and the Citadel Bulldogs, which took place this past Saturday at 2 o'clock at Johnson Haygood Stadium. We'll take our first time out of the program and come back and get right back to it. This is the Head Coach Brent Thompson radio show. It's the season finale on ESPN Radio 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
When you're feeling hungry, You don't want to mess around with a quarter-pound meat sandwich. Instead, eat the new half-pound roast beef sandwiches. 8 ounces of thinly sliced, tender roast beef. And if you really want a quarter pound of beef, that's cool. Just eat half of one of these. Arby's, we have the meats.
Style. Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
How do we make sure there's toppings in each bite of Papa John's pizza? We check 80,000 times a year. Now get an extra large 2-topping pizza for just $11. Everyone's doing their part to make your game day better.
Dad, grab something good. No junk food, please.
Go for the Trumu! It's delicious!
That's chocolate. But it's nutritious and contains no artificial growth hormones.
Trumu, a truly good thing anytime.
Welcome back to Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue, downtown Charleston. This is the season finale for the head coach Brent Thompson radio show. The Citadel Bulldogs' last 2 ball games of the regular season will include a trip to Furman and a trip to Clemson. We won't get too deep into the Tigers, but may mention those guys before the end of the program today. I'm Mike Legg, alongside the head coach of the Citadel Bulldogs, Brent Thompson, as we take a look back at the game against 24th-ranked Western Carolina. They came into Johnson-Haygood Stadium last couple of times. Your team had played them, Coach. You know, the way the games worked out, you could understand if Western Carolina was rather determined to get a crack at your guys. You had physically handled them in both of the previous 2 games, including a game at Johnson-Haygood Stadium a couple of years ago, a 28-10 victory. Troy Mitchell was their quarterback at the time, and you guys kind of put a fence around him from a defensive perspective. And then last year at Western Carolina, one of your better efforts. So I kind of expected, I'm sure you did too, they would come in with this game maybe circled on the calendar.
Yeah, we got that sense. There's no doubt about it, and we get that sense from a lot of teams recently, and that's going to happen when you win the conference and you have 2 solid years like the way that we've had. So we expected it, and we welcomed it, and I thought we handled it fairly well, obviously, up until a point.
The way this game started, Bulldogs win the toss, defer to the second half, and Western Carolina takes the ball. VMI scored on their opening drive the week before. Western Carolina did the same. VMI got a touchdown, and then this Western Carolina team was able to get a touchdown. They find a kid named Connell Young in the end zone, an 8-yard touchdown pass from Tyree Adams. So they go 75 yards, 10 plays, 355. What did you see from them offensively? Obviously, you know your way around the offensive side of the football. What was Western Carolina doing? Did they catch you guys on their heels? How did you see that first drive going?
Well, I thought they executed extremely well. You could tell what their game plan was. They were going to start out. They mixed in fairly well with the run. They had a couple big runs in there, and then of course they had the final play was a little bit of a rub pick route play that was a well-designed play, and they hit the young man in the flat, and he goes ahead and scores there. So I thought it was a well-executed drive on their part. We're a little bit on our heels, just sitting back and kind of figuring out what their game plan is going to be. Well, once it's obvious what their game plan is going to be, we settled down, and I thought we settled down and played extremely well.
56 rushing yards for the Bulldogs in the first quarter, 38 for Western Carolina. The Catamounts threw for 44 in that first quarter of play so far. The Bulldogs were pretty good as far as third down went in that regard. You always talk about trying to stay ahead of schedule. 3 out of 5 on third down in the first quarter to play.
Well, Mike, we have a great first drive. We get the ball back. We're down by 7. That's okay. We're in a good spot. We're doing what we want. We're methodically moving down the field. We're executing it fairly well. We're staying ahead of the chains, like you just talked about. We're getting our drive starters going early. We want to make sure that we try to get our first and 10 plays off at about 4 or 5 yards a clip, and I thought we did that. And we're in great position. We get the ball down first and 10, I believe, on the 20-yard line. And just kind of a routine exchange of, quarterback center exchange. We fumbled it. And that was kind of the start of the end of our day right there.
I seem to remember, and I hope I'm not blurring two games together, it seems to me like you snapped the ball a little earlier in the play clock. Were you trying to up the tempo a little bit, maybe more against Western Carolina?
Well, we felt like we had them where we wanted them. We felt that we were executing fairly well. We could keep their defense on the field. One of those things. Everything was working just as it would, and I think we just kind of pulled out from under center early.
Let's take a look at what happens in the second quarter. After 1, it's Western Carolina leading the ball game by a count of 7-0. Going into the second quarter of play, a little bit more action there. Your guys come back as the second quarter is about to begin, tie the ball game up. Keontae Sessions is somebody I know we're going to see a lot, number 26. And Dominique Allen capped off a drive that was just 25 yards long, took 5 plays, found him in the end zone.
Yeah, nice drive. It was good to convert it, and it was a good job getting him into the end zone. I know we tried a couple of times to run it in, and what ends up happening is they end up supporting everybody, and we ended up being able to get Keontae open on the wheel ball.
A 2-yard touchdown toss from Allen to Keontae Sessions. And the Bulldogs have tied it up after the extra point from Jacob Godek. Western gets a field goal of 39 yards to make it 10-7, and it's a back-and-forth kind of a ball game here. Jacob Godek comes out, kicks a 23-yard field goal that capped a 13-play, 53-yard drive in 6:55. And where I was standing, was glad to see him get an opportunity and nail one right through the uprights, because that can do a world of wonder and a world of good for a guy's confidence, obviously.
Yeah, it was a new day for Jacob. I thought he did a good job of correcting himself the week before, and I had all the confidence. I didn't think he was going to miss that one. I thought he was going to be right on there. It was a good time. Unfortunately, we really, I think we shot ourselves in the foot on that drive. We jumped off sides to have to kick the field goal. We were about ready to go for it on 4th and 1, but unfortunately, when we went off sides, it didn't work out that way.
You and I talked about Jacob the previous week, and he has a brother who's a kicker. He kind of looked over a few things. He did a pretty good self-evaluation. I know you met with him the week to just kind of talk it through, let him work through some things in his mind. Does the situation like his, when he had a rough week before, and then you come back and are we too quick to, and I'm talking about fans, I'm talking about media, are we way too quick on the trigger to push panic buttons because you guys didn't seem to?
Of course. I listened to a couple of coaches over the course of the years, and they always say that everybody wants to talk about what you're not doing. And that's kind of one of those cases. Yeah, we're not hitting the field goals now. Yeah, we get it. However, we want to be able to hit those field goals. We got to have confidence in our own players. That's what we did. We went through it a little bit with Cody Clark last year. I mean, these things happen. They're 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old players. They're great kids. They're terrific kids, and they'll figure it out. We've just got to hold them accountable and keep confidence in them.
And those who say things like that, oftentimes, if their organizations were handled in a similar fashion, knee-jerky, stuff like that, it wouldn't be very good organizations, and they probably wouldn't want to work for that organization.
No. And it's just it's something when you're evaluated and you put yourself out there every single week like our players do, like our staff does, is you're evaluated every single week of the season by what you've done. And that's kind of what we've come to expect, and we've come to deal with it. And that's okay. That's the whole reason why we do it. We do it because there's a little bit of an excitement level to that, is we like being evaluated every single week. We put ourselves out there. It's a lot of fun. That's the challenge of it. That's the competition in it. And, if not, we would probably go doing something else and something a little bit more laid back. But really for us, this is how we enjoy living our lives.
With 2:28 to go in the second quarter, the game is all tied at 10. Western Carolina goes on a drive at the end of the first half and scores with 8 seconds to go. A 32-yard touchdown pass from Adams to Terrion Robinson. They went 55 yards in 5 plays, and they have the halftime lead. I know, though, going into the halftime locker room, you're thinking, well, we get the ball first in the second half based on winning the coin toss and deferring until the second half. We can always just tie it up then.
Well, Mike, it was a strange series of events there. We had the reverse touchdown call. Of course, they get the ball at the 20-yard line, and they give it back to us, which was very nice of them. And unfortunately, we gave it right back to them. So what ends up happening is, we force them to punt. They punt it back to us. We do a good job of giving it right back to them, and we give them good field position right there. And that's a 14-point swing for us. And part of that was, us trying to force a play. I thought we were playing extremely well on offense, trying to move the ball down and just at least trying to get those 3 points back. Some of it had to do a little bit with frustration of not getting the touchdown call there and getting that reverse back. So that hurts us as well. And then it's a 14-point swing. So we go in at halftime saying that we're moving the ball. We're doing everything we wanted to do. We made very few adjustments on offense. We're down by 7 points. It's not the end of the world. We'll be fine. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get the ball, like you said. We're going to travel back down the field, and we're going to score. Done.
And so you put that on them, and that's exactly what happened there. I'm glad you mentioned the touchdown that was called back. You guys come out, first play, and Dominique Allen hits Cam Jackson for 51 yards and an apparent touchdown. From the naked eye, did it look like a touchdown to you? Yeah, of course, from where I was standing. But I'm standing back by the 50-yard line where the ball was snapped. I couldn't see it. I was only hoping on the way in there that he had the ball long enough. You don't know that, the kid thinks he's got it in there, obviously. You look at it on the replay, I could see why they called it a fumble. They're certainly there. You don't know where he loses possession at. I've seen the still photos of it. The ball does look like it's coming loose a half a yard out or 6 inches out, whatever. And I guess that's the whole reason why we have replay. And you and Mercer, the only two teams that have it now, everybody comes in next year, right? Full bore. That's the plan, and I hope that is the plan. I think it would be good to have everything across the board there. As we know, that wouldn't have been it wouldn't have been reversed at any other place except for maybe Mercer. The only unfortunate thing for us is that's the only call that's ever been reversed in Johnson-Haygood Stadium. And, unfortunately went against us, but that's the way it goes. Were you like me in that you think once this thing goes under review, the longer it takes, maybe the worse news you're going to get? Absolutely. They're trying to figure out exactly. So sometimes you sit there and you think, how am I going to tell these fans this? How am I going to tell this coach this? The fact that I got to take this touchdown off the board there. You kind of wonder what the discussion is all about. But, yeah, what they see is that they think they see something there, and they're going to pry it open until they finally crack it and see exactly. Because they've got 4 or 5 different angles, 6 different angles on the thing, and they got to match them all up, and they got to look at them all together. So I was kind of clued into what the replay looked like and what the replay booth looked like from some of the guys that were in there. And they said, here's how it works. They've got 6 different angles. They pull them all up together, and they try to match the exact angle with the exact time that the ball came out. And when you do that and you've got the advantages of all the rewind and things, it makes it a little bit easier for them to call. A lot of people are getting used to the replay situation here and having it in the games and stuff like that. Can you describe what it's like with that conversation between the ref on the field and the replay booth? Are the guy, is the ref in charge, or is the booth in charge, or is it a conjunction of efforts there? Well, the booth is in charge ultimately when it goes to replay. They're going to have the final. They're going to either say yay or nay, or they're going to say just not enough there. Most of the time, it's been not enough there. And unfortunately, we lost the challenge, or they reviewed it last week when Ben Roberts was ejected from the game there. And I thought there was enough to probably overturn it. However, when it came down to it, I don't know that we had the greatest possible angles to look at right there. So we couldn't see it. There wasn't enough to overturn it. And that's how you have it. This time around, you got a better angle on it. You can see it. You can match up all the views. A little bit easier for them to call. So, unfortunately, the Bulldogs were up at 1 point, 16-10, trying to kick the extra point. How close did you get to getting the extra point snapped? I'm trying to remember that. I think it was pretty close. They're gonna call it. They're gonna call it no matter what. Gotcha. They're gonna call it. They're gonna review every single touchdown anyway. You could have crossed with the ball over top of your head, and they would have stopped it and flagged it anyway. They're gonna look at them all. Gotcha. All right. So it's 17-10. Bulldogs were in front. Then the touchdown comes off the board. Western Carolina is able to get in and score, and it makes it 17-10 at the halftime break. When we come back from the timeout now, we'll talk about the second half. First of all, we'll talk about some more things that Coach may have talked about with his guys at halftime, and then talk about the third and fourth quarter of this one. In the second half of the program tonight, we'll have an opportunity to move on fully to the Furman Paladins, the hated Furman Paladins, that's for sure. Coach and I return in just a couple of moments. We're at Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue downtown, 126 Williman Street, for the head coach Brent Thompson radio show on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
TD Bank's new intern, Bart, is one of those robots from another bank. We're training him to bank human. Bart, why are you winding the clock back?
The clock stated 11:35 p.m., but they are still working.
The clock is fine. Our live customer service is available all night, and all day for that matter. He's learning.
At TD Bank, we do things differently.
Hello?
Like live customer service.
Hello?
24/7. Don't just bank. Bank human.
Since 2002, the lottery has helped award more than 1 million scholarships. So when you play, you're not just taking a chance. You're also giving one.
The great thing about an old truck is you can treat it like an old truck, which is exactly why you got a truck in the first place. It's not old, it's broken in. So keep it running longer, stronger, with quality parts and a whole lot of Napa know-how. That's not gonna buff out.
TD Bank.
Welcome back to Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue downtown Charleston. This is the head coach Brent Thompson radio show, and we are about 40 minutes away from the end of the program and the end of the season here. I was joking with Coach before the show started. If this is a season finale, there should be some sort of a cliffhanger at the end here. So we'll have to try to figure out something that will keep people on the edge of their seats until we return with this particular show next year. Halftime of the ball game against Western Carolina. The Catamounts have a lead of 17-10 in this one. You had shared with me that the thing that you had mentioned to your guys, it's like, hey, guys, we're down 7. We got the ball. I think we need to go down and get that touchdown back right now. And your guys listened to you. They came right back down, scored.
Yeah, it was like a 3 or 4 play drive. It was really everything had come off of the pass that we had gotten reversed there as the safety was cheated over to our 2 receiver side, so we have the whole middle of the field wide open. Cam Jackson catches the ball, we go down there, and unfortunately we don't get the touchdown out of it. However, you've got to adjust to it, right? So you figure that they're going to move the safety back to where he belongs. And once they do that, it opens up back the run game to that side, and that's exactly what we did. We had a couple of veer option plays to that side. We called a couple of veers, opened up the run game a little bit. We did a great job blocking on the perimeter. And then once we had the safety cheated back over to the 2 receiver side, overplaying the veer, we were able to hit Dominique Allen on just a quick little midline play to the backside of it and walk in for the end zone, which was a nice little drive for us.
17-17 at that particular point. 3-play drive, 67 yards. It took 1 minute and 17 seconds. And I just thought of a strange question. I know you've talked to me before about how much time you spend in meetings with offense and how much time you spend with defense, how much time you spend with special teams. I'm wondering, though, on game day, I'm assuming your headset's like a lot of headsets. You could switch over and listen to defense, switch over, listen to offense. How much do you spend time-wise on each of those? I mean, you can listen into what the defensive coaches are saying, what the offensive coaches are saying. How do you go back and forth?
Well, you have to spend, really just to manage the game, you have to click over as soon as the possession goes to the other side. So I've got about, whether we're in between possessions or if we're on a media timeout, I've got about 4 or 5 minutes there where I can possibly work with the offense, talk to the offensive coaches, make the corrections, kind of go through my mind. Now, I've got a little bit of a pad and paper that I write on, just a laminated piece of paper that I write my notes on. But then I immediately click over so that I can manage the game on the other side. If they need me, if there's a penalty, if we need to call a timeout, or I just try to stay engaged with the game as the way, how's the defense playing, which we always have to try to play off of on offense, is we got to make sure that we're matching them. If we're struggling, we've got to keep the ball and hold on to the ball and be able to maintain possession of the ball. If we're playing fairly well, we can take a little bit more chance with the ball. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about and I'm looking at as we manage the game. And then, of course, it's timeouts and it's, of course, different scenarios that you're thinking in your head. So to answer your question is I am on the defensive side when we were on the defensive side of the ball, and then I click over to offense when we're on offense.
17-17 all ball game. I want to get back to that in a second here because one of our loyal listeners came up during the break and was asking a question about replay and particularly about the Cam Jackson situation. And it got me thinking a little bit too. So let me see if I can phrase this in the proper way. When you have a runner with the ball who apparently, according to the officials, crosses the goal line, scores a touchdown, then the whistle blows, how can an instant replay then determine a change of possession if it were a dead ball? Guys are stopping. They're not pursuing a ball. They think it's a touchdown. So that seems like one of those circumstances where, to me, if you overturn a touchdown, wouldn't it be a dead ball at the point where they said it was, meaning you still have the ball, but you have it at the 1 yard line? How does that whole thing work there upstairs and downstairs?
That's a great question. I don't know that they know fully where the whistle blew at, right? So you've got to probably match all that up. I don't know that they've got audio up there. That's a great question. If they can hear it, if they've got a good understanding of where he was when the whistle did blow, because like you say, we could have had somebody. I don't think that we did have anybody close enough to be able to jump on the ball. But if if we were in the end zone and we jumped on it and they didn't, it still would be a touchdown for us, I would imagine.
You didn't have anybody down there because Cam outran everybody, right?
Everybody except for their guy.
One guy caught up in that particular circumstance, because I'd always imagined that the instant replay deals only in a review about what was called on the field. And if the officials called touchdown, they did not call a fumble recovery in the end zone. So that one was a little bit of a, the game's moving on, we're moving on, and we're continuing to talk about it upstairs at that particular point. But an interesting little nuance to that. The whistle did blow before anybody recovered the football, yet the change of possession was ruled to have happened after the instant replay. So the game is 17-all at that particular point. We're into the third quarter, and the Bulldogs scored relatively quickly. It was 1 minute, 17 seconds into the third quarter. Western comes right back, though. They score on an 81-yard touchdown run, and that one was one of those that just felt like, oh, wow, the gut punch.
That one hurt because it was 2 consecutive plays. So we left the half at the halftime, just before the halftime. They scored. And we come back, we get the possession, but then our defense takes the field, and, of course, they rip off an 85-yarder, which really we had some guys and we just didn't make the play right there. And I got to hand it to Trez. He made a great move on us. And then once he gets in the open field, he's extremely fast.
So Western at that point is up 24-17. Now, I hadn't asked you yet about special teams in this game because it was glaring that something may have been spotted in film study, but 3 of their punts were blocked, including one with 4:24 to go in the third quarter that resulted in a safety. So did something appear during the week that made you think we got to go after these guys every time they punt?
Yeah, Coach Gunner had a pretty good plan for their punt. We didn't know that we could absolutely get one, but we saw that there were some seams in it. And Cam Jackson was the one that came to us and said that he wanted to be the guy to go do it. Cam's a graduate student for us, so he's not always there for special teams. But this particular case, we thought it would be a good little situation for him. He's always kind of mixed in on special teams, but never really been a key role player for us in that position. And came out and ended up getting 3 or at least causing a couple of them. But the hard part about that whole scenario right there, Mike, is we block a kick, and what does it do? It goes out the back of the end zone, right? Yeah. So instead of us having either a great field position because we would have had the ball probably inside the 10, inside the 5, it goes out the back of the end zone for 2 points instead of us being able to convert 7 points out of it. Now they do kick the ball back to us, but we couldn't convert on a longer field, unfortunately.
After 3, it was 24-19. in favor of Western Carolina. There would be only one score coming in the fourth quarter. It would happen on a 6-yard touchdown pass from Adams to Terrion Robinson. They went 7 plays and 71 yards in 3:29 and get the 31-19 situation, and that would be enough to be the final score in the football game. What kind of things did you talk about to your guys after the ball game was over?
Well, first of all, you got to hand it to Western. I thought they did a good job. They executed extremely well on defense. The things that I was very disappointed in is I thought that it was very similar to a few of our other losses in that we had very, very key opportunities that we didn't convert on. It happened to us a little bit at Wofford. In the Wofford game. It happened to us a lot in the Mercer game. We turned the ball over. We turned the ball over in the red zone. We turned the ball over on the 1-yard line again in that Wofford game as well. And then you go ahead and you do it again. And you have very few opportunities to win football games when you do it that way. And I think we had 4 red zone turnovers. And at the end of the day, you can't win many games doing it like that. We played fairly well on special teams. We played well enough on defense, I think, to win it. And we played extremely well on offense in spurts. You take away 4 or 5 plays, which is always the case, and you turn the ball over, and the next thing you know is you lose that game by 9 points, and you probably had an opportunity to win by at least 2 touchdowns.
Red zone offense in the ball game. It ended up being on your side 2 for 5. We've talked about some of the circumstances that played into that situation. Where do you, if you're at a certain, you're probably going to say 100%. You want to be 100% when you're in there, at least 100% on getting some sort of a points at it. But what is your standard and what is your goal when it comes to being in the red zone?
Well, Mike, I'll give you an idea. Is in 2014 we were about 90% and we were top 5 in the country. We were pretty decent at field goal kicking. We were pretty decent at punching the ball in, and that's for our offense. That's what we should be. Is we. Once we get inside the 20, we should have that ability to be able to pound out yards in there. We don't need to put the ball in the air usually. Unfortunately, this is kind of one of those years where we have to put the ball in the air a little bit to try to score touchdowns because I think somebody asked me the other day about it at the press conference, and that is why is it so difficult for you to run the ball? Well, they get right on top of you. The safeties, they don't play as deep. The linebackers don't play as deep, but in a normal year for us, we'll be able to dig those guys out of there. It shouldn't be an issue for us. Is they can pack all those guys in the box. We can read a couple of them. We can pitch off a couple of them. We can do enough different things. We can counter them. But this year that's been a little bit of a struggle for us, and that's it's due to a lot of things. But really, we need to be better at that.
Western Carolina gets the win, 31-19. We'll put that one behind us. We're at the halfway point of the show, and when we come back, we'll start talking about Furman. There are some other questions that kind of sit outside of the Furman game that we'll get into coming up in just a little bit from right now. The schedule for next year, which, given that this is our last show, something that will be brought up here. Recruiting is something that we probably don't ask enough questions on because you guys are working on it way more than we're asking about it for the most part. So when we come back, we'll start talking to the coach about some of these other items. Big rivalry game this weekend with Furman. It's a 2 o'clock ball game, and it will be in Greenville against the Paladins, who started the season shaky. They've turned it around, though, and we'll get into the Paladins when we come back in a moment. This is the Coach Brent Thompson Radio Show, the season finale on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
Sorry, Dad.
Sure, you could get him a new car. You could also light a pile of money on fire. Because as long as Mr. It wasn't my fault takes the wheel on occasion, maintaining this car is your best option. So keep it running longer, stronger, with quality parts and a whole lot of Napa know-how.
Dad, where are you going?
Buying a home is a big financial decision, so you need a strong team working on your mortgage. That team is at South Atlantic Bank.
Decisions are made right here in our community by mortgage professionals who really know the Low Country.
South Atlantic Bank offers competitive rates and terms on loans for home purchase or refinance. If you need a mortgage loan, you need the mortgage loan professionals at South Atlantic Bank.
South Atlantic Bank Mortgage Group, providing the keys to home ownership.
don't know. Walking down the avenue, be it gray or be it blue, Live 5 News everywhere I go. You're everywhere, got you everywhere, everywhere I go. Whoa, 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 everywhere I go.
Welcome back to the show. This is the Brent Thompson Radio Show, entering the final half of the final show of the 2017 season. No show next week. Citadel basketball overlaps, and therefore that will take us in another direction. So 2 games left for the Citadel Bulldogs regular season-wise, and they will take on Furman on the road and then the Clemson Tigers. And so obviously the thing that this game represents, you are in a circumstance where a game that your guys should get up for and a game that many Citadel teams over the years have gotten up for because it's such a heated rivalry is in a way a circumstance that could be the key to you having a winning season, which I know is your ultimate goal as of right now.
Yeah, and I think it falls at a great time for us. Yeah, we just took a tough loss to Western. It kind of knocked us out of any hopes that we had for the playoffs. So we're feeling a little bit down, right? I mean, it's a good opportunity for us to get back in the win column, beat a rival team, get to 6-5 and 6-4 heading into the Clemson game. So those are all things that can still be exciting for us. I thought we had a great week of practice. We're still, enjoying being out there. We still enjoy playing. I don't think anybody is, overly frustrated. Obviously, we're frustrated in the time that we lost, but I think we all know that we certainly had our opportunities to have a better year. It just didn't work out that way. And sometimes you have seasons like that, and if you coach long enough, you'll have plenty of them.
Glad you mentioned a little bit about that because I think it's an important distinction that you have guys be disappointed. You would want a team to be disappointed when you haven't won as much as you would like to win, but there's a difference between pointing fingers frustrated and I still love my teammates and I want to do well for my teammates kind of frustrated.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. I mean, we've all been here together. We all stayed together. I thought the locker room's been great. The practices have been great. I haven't heard anybody, pointing the finger, blaming anybody. We all have had our good days. We've all had our bad days, and unfortunately, we've just put together a couple of bad days.
So it's on to Furman now, and the Paladins started the season off looking like it might not be much of an improvement from the previous staff, which went away at the end of last year. Furman loses their first 3 games of the year and turned it around. I mean, they opened the season against Wofford week 1, lost by 1. My understanding is they went for 2 to try to win the ball game there. So, I mean, they start off 0-1, but, that one could have gone either way. It was a heroic kind of a thing there. And you're on the road, not that far from home, but you're on the road, and you go for 2 to try to win a football game. Some would have tried that, some might not have. And he tried to do that, and they lose that particular game. They lost to Elon. At the time, it was 34-31, and that looked like a bad loss. But Elon's pretty good now, for example.
Yeah, Elon's a top 25 team. They may be in the top 10 right now. Both those teams are in the top 10 right now. I mean, those 2 wins those 2 losses look like nothing right now.
Regular losses, yeah. Elon is 7th, and Wofford is 8th. Then, of course, you're going to likely lose when you go on the road and play NC State. And that's a top 25 team in terms of all of FBS, and they lose their 49-16. So at that point, they're 0-3, and things don't look like they're going to be all that good. And then they rip off 6 consecutive wins. Obviously, that's as hot as anybody in the league.
Absolutely, and they're playing great football. They're doing exactly what they've got to do to win games, and they're not beating themselves. They're not turning it over. They're doing just enough to win those games. They're playing tight ball games. They could have lost any one of those as well, but like I said, they've been able to maintain possession of the ball. He's gotten to be very, very similar to the way that he was at Air Force, similar to Wofford, and fairly close to what we do. So I think he's got a great formula for success right now.
So after the 3 straight losses, they win at Colgate, they win against ETSU, they win at Chattanooga, they beat VMI, They beat Mercer, and they go on the road in a game that was a torrential downpour, and they win at Western Carolina and did so 28-6. They have scored a lot of points. They've held teams to a low number of points, and we've seen Furman teams over the last 2-3 years, they might be able to score, but they haven't been able to stop anybody either. So that piece of it's turned around, even though this is a brand new head coach and he's an offensive guy, Clay Hendricks. The defense has improved as well. And the defensive coordinator is a guy who spent a lot of his time in Charleston over the last several years.
Yeah, Coach Staggs, he's done a great job, and he's done a great job at Charleston Southern as well. So no big surprise there. They're very, very good against the run, which is about what they should be. You know, they're a run-oriented team. He's always been good against the run when he was at Charleston Southern. He works extremely hard at it. He gets his kids fired up and ready to play. They're technically sound players, and they play extremely tough.
Let's look at them offensively. They list themselves as a multiple offense, which that's just about anything can happen. They rank second in the league in total offense. They're fourth in rushing, and they're sixth in passing. 75% run to 25% pass in terms of plays run. 57% run in terms of the yardage that they put together. What is Furman doing differently on the offensive side of the ball? Because don't they look a lot like you guys now?
Well, yeah, it's very similar. They'll get in a little shotgun. They run a little shotgun triple option in there, but they're like Furman of old. Sometimes they'll get into a tight end look. They'll get into an unbalanced formation look, run the belly, stick the belly up and in there. And they do a good job of running the belly. They run the jet sweep off of it, and then they do a good job of running the dive, which I really like the way that the fullback or the B-back Wilcox runs. He finds the crease. He finds the crease to the backside. The offensive line is well coached, and they move bodies out of there. And ultimately, he finds a crease, and he finds a crease sometimes out the backside, which is sometimes not well guarded.
Finally, P.J. Blazejowski, their quarterback, is a senior. You've seen him for many a year now. This is a young man who you kind of watched grow up in the quarterback spot.
You know, he's a playmaker, and he's always been a playmaker. He's been a scrambler. In the old offense, he could make plays with his feet. In this offense, it's more multidimensional for him. Is he can run a little bit of the veer out of the gun. Well, one thing that we always knew that he could do was throw the football. He's on the money. I've seen him throw out balls to the field, hash to sidelines. He's got an extremely strong arm. He's not afraid to let the thing rip out there. So I think that's the dimension that really hurts you is the B-back and then the quarterback being able to rip a throw out there is pretty good.
Blazejowski has completed 61% of his passes. He's the second-rated passer in the league, 1,595 yards, 14 TDs, only 3 interceptions. Sounds like he's safe, like you're talking about. He makes the throws. But that's a heck of a touchdown to interception ratio.
Well, he gets him wide open on the play action. He hits the wide open guys on the play action, which is something that is you think it sounds easy at times, but really you work to get those guys open. You have one, maybe two opportunities to be able to get that ball converted. And if you don't, the play's lost. They're going to cover it the next time. But he finds a way to make sure that the ball is on the money.
Coach mentioned Antonio Wilcox. He is their leading rusher, but they do have guys who get a lot of yards. He has 575. A couple of other backs have 400 or more. Keelan Dirks, who actually, based on yards per game, he's played one less game than Wilcox, actually ranks second in the league in rushing. They have a kid named Darius Moorhead, who I remember from previous times too. So it's always good. You've always wanted to have 3 B-backs that are formidable for you. You'd like to have, 5 A-backs that are good for you too. So it looks like they have a good stall of running backs.
Well, he's taking the personnel that was already there, and he's making it what he needs to make it right there. So those 2 B-backs are about as good as you can get. He's going to find probably more A-backs in the years to come and try to build his offense around that. Right now he's kind of taken some of the slot wide receivers that they had in the old offense and converted them and made them into tight ends and A-backs for him.
11 different receivers have caught passes for them from an offensive perspective. You've been mentioning him, and we're talking about Clay Hendricks, their head coach. He came from Air Force. He's an old Furman guy. He played on the offensive line for Furman in days when they were awfully, awfully good, particularly in the late 1980s. So, we've talked about how he's changed things up a little bit from an offensive perspective. What other stamps do you think he's put on the program?
He's made them tougher. They are a tough downhill run team. They do a great job of stopping the run on defense, and it's kind of falls right in line. And I alluded to it before with the formula for success. The formula for success there is no different than it is here, no different than it is at Wofford. It's take care of the football, drive the ball, stop the run, make them all one-dimensional. And, if you can do all those things, you're going to be successful. And he knows that. He's been in this league, and that's kind of been the way that the league has worked out for. So we're all trying to do the same thing. It's just going to be a matter of who can do it best or better.
They are listed as a 34 defense. They rank 7th in the league out of 9 in total defense, 3rd in rushing defense, and 9th in pass defense. This is a team that has 24 sacks. They have 44 tackles for loss, and everything is kind of evenly distributed among those numbers. Turnover margin of +4 when you deal with the Furman Paladins. But numbers aside, this is one of those rivalry games, and this is one of those games where they're going to be a little bit different, most likely, than what they were on tape. Your guys will be a little bit different than maybe what they have watched on tape, because both sides, more than anything else, want to beat the other. Both have a lot to play for in this weekend's game, too.
Well, even though we haven't played each other yet, we haven't gone against each other in the last couple of years. We kind of know what we're doing on both sides of the ball. Is when you take two similar offenses, it's like playing Wofford all over again. Is you've got to figure out different ways to be able to move the football. It'll be a defensive game. There's no doubt about it, and it'll be a little bit of a defensive struggle. So whoever really could buy it, the points will be at a premium this week.
When tape is watched during the course of the year, and we'll take a time out here in just a second, do you gain more out of watching when you're preparing for everybody else, Chattanooga and Western Carolina? Have you gained more from the films that were involving Furman based on the way that they play, the things that they do? Does that give you a little better look and an idea of how someone might defend you, for example?
Yeah, Furman and Wofford are the two films that we watch predominantly. We try to figure out, what they were particularly trying to do, and then how they were trying to stop them, whoever the defense was trying to stop them. And it's actually provided some pretty good intel for us. Unfortunately, you don't want to have too many teams doing exactly what you do, especially when you are a Veer team like we are. But we all try to have just a little bit of a different wrinkle on it to keep each other separated.
Furman had a week off last week, and they come into your game a bit more fresh. Is that one of those things? I mean, I know you can't do anything about it, but is that one of those things you look at the schedule and like, wow, this is, they'll be ready to go for us because they've had a little bit of extra time? I guess maybe the question would be, would you prefer they didn't have one in the week before you play them?
Yeah, of course not. But, sometimes bye weeks can be overrated. And I've even fallen into the same trap of maybe you get a little bit too much time to game plan. You usually set on a 1 or 2 day game plan streak. We kind of end our game planning on Tuesdays. Sometimes we carry over a little bit into Wednesday. But when you have an extra week to think about it, man, it can drive you absolutely bonkers. You're trying to figure out different things that you can do, and you end up probably doing too much. And I've fallen into that trap before. So I really am going to try to limit myself moving forward in the bye weeks. But you don't know how other people do it.
Furman and the Citadel at Greenville. That's coming up this Saturday. It's a 2 o'clock ball game. We will continue talking about the Paladins, and we have just one segment left in the 2017 season for our shows here at Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue. So we'll be back to get that underway after the break. This is ESPN Radio 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
TD Bank's new intern, Bart, is one of those robots from another bank. We're training him to bank human.
Bart, why are you winding the clock back?
The clock stated 11:35 p.m., but they are still working.
The clock is fine. Our live customer service is available all night, and all day for that matter.
He's learning.
At TD Bank, we do things differently.
Hello?
Like live customer service.
Hello?
24/7. Don't just bank human.
Since 2002, the lottery has helped award more than 1 million scholarships. So when you play, you're not just taking a chance. You're also giving one.
The great thing about an old truck is you can treat it like an old truck, which is exactly why you got a truck in the first place. It's not old, it's broken in. So keep it running longer, stronger, with quality parts and a whole lot of Napa know-how. That's not gonna buff out.
TD Bank.
Final segment of the season on the Head Coach Brent Thompson radio show from Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue downtown. And a lot of times in circumstances where you have shows where you need to thank people, sometimes you'll wait till too late and you don't get it done. So I'm going to start the segment off by saying that we want to say a great big thanks to the folks at Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue. We were at West Ashley for the last 3 years and now a different location for this year. So Aaron Siegel and his partners, we want to say a big thanks to you guys, and that goes for all the managers and all of the servers that we've come in contact, audio guys, and anybody that we have encountered this year. We thank them very much for having us here. And this is one of those circumstances where on a Wednesday night when Coach comes over to do this radio show, his guys are getting a little bit of a taste, pardon the pun, of Home Team Barbecue as well, because that's what's going back to the office for the guys, and I know that's usually a big hit. So, that having been said, we just want to say a big thanks to the guys at Home Team.
Well, Mike, this is an outstanding location, too. There's a great scene down here. Usually when it's great weather, there's a lot going on outside. This is it's a really a neat location. So if you haven't been down here, I think it's a great opportunity. Come down, visit, sit down, and have a great meal.
Is there a menu item you might endorse over any other?
I don't know that I've had anything else but the wings here. But I tell you what, I have, in the off season, I've had some other things here. But it's great. I live on campus, so this is a great location for us. I'll bring the kids down here and enjoy it in the off season.
By the way, I had the burger special a little earlier tonight. That's top notch too. So, but I had to have a few wings to go on the side. And you got me on the death relish. I can't live without it anymore. So.
Needed the death relish today. A little cool out here, but we'd heat you up inside.
So the last segment of the show for the season, now that we've gotten our thank yous out of the way, and we can't say thank you enough to everybody who was involved in having us out here each and every week. As far as Furman goes, we've talked about them defensively. We've talked about them offensively. Special teams-wise, what's your take on it?
Good place kicker. He pins it pretty deep. They're very, very sound. They don't make many mistakes on it. If you don't pressure the kick, I think he's going to get a good kickoff. He's got a fairly. I think he's a senior this year. Feels like we've seen him for quite a few years. So I think they've got a good solid returner. We've got to be on our game. And I think really they're just very sound in the special teams game.
I had a fan call the radio show I host during the week the other day and talk about how everything's a touchback these days when it comes to kicking. And I said, of course, I don't have a dog in the fight per se. I said it wouldn't hurt my feelings if they moved them back a little bit so that there was a return each and every time there was a kickoff. Coaches might feel different about that. Where would you be on that if there were more returns? You would get more returns. The other guys that you kick to would have more returns. Or are you happy when your guy sails it out of the back of the end zone?
I'm definitely happy when we sail it out of the back of the end zone. There's a couple of reasons there, and we've talked about it as coaches in our AFCA, our American Football Coaches Association. We've talked about the kickoff possibly being, it's a lot of space out there. It's one of the more dangerous plays in football. A lot of people running around. You're getting a full speed head start, and the other team's kind of standing still, waiting for you to come at them. It's like some sort of old school combat going on. You're standing in there like a cannon fodder and just taking it off the chest all day long. It could be very, very difficult. So I don't want to see him take it out because I think it's an integral part of the game. I also don't mind there being all those touchbacks as well. You still have to have the opportunity to onside kick, to sky kick, to pop over kick. There's certain dynamics of the kickoff that you still want to have in place in case there's a situation where you don't want to put it out of the back of the end zone. However, if you could put it out of the back of the end zone, by all means, I think you should.
Now, I will say the other day when I answered that question, I did say there is an asterisk there, and that has to do with player safety, and I know that's why it is not likely to change because, as you mentioned, that's a big series of car wrecks out there for sure. Whenever those things tend to happen. Wanted to ask you a couple of questions, maybe three, before we close things out here. And I'm not trying to actually ask this question to get you to comment in a negative fashion on it, but we don't ask too many questions of you most of the time about officiating, how tough it is, how good it is, or whatever the case may be. So I thought I would just do the blanket question about officiating and what you think about it, what you've seen over the first couple of years since you've been a head coach.
I don't know if my attitude has changed towards officiating. I don't know if they've kind of toned it down a little bit with the new rules. But I thought we did a fairly good job this year of officiating. The one thing that I do like about our officials is they do talk to you. They do communicate with you. They communicate with one another. They pick up flags if it's not true. Do they get tic-tac at times? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, sometimes when you feel like you're out there for a reason, you need to throw a flag to make yourself seen and known, and otherwise I think they should sew them to their pockets. But really, for the most part, I think it's a well-officiated crews out there, and they're very, very professional.
I knew there was an emphasis this year, and there have been over the course of an entire college football season, and at both levels of it, there have been more targeting calls. I think you've had one, though, right, with Roberts? Or am I missing any there? I don't think you've had many of those.
That is true. Jack Childress, our head of officials, will send us out every week, and you are right on. I don't know if we are calling it more, we're trying to penalize it more, or if it's occurring more. That's the one thing that we've got to look at and we've got to talk about probably as an overall football community. But, yeah, we've had the one. We probably get maybe one a year. Unfortunately, it happened to us, and it happens. And if it happens in the wrong position, it could hurt you, and I felt that it did.
And this year with replay, they were able to review the one with Ben Roberts instead of waiting until halftime or waiting until after the game or even having the league review it. They were able to determine that on the spot. Recruiting question, basic recruiting question. Obviously, you have to do it every day. And you are doing it every day, and calls are being made all the time with recruiting and stuff like that. Can you talk about your efforts there, needs, accomplishments, things like that?
Well, we're always in a unique situation. We've got to almost recruit everything every year. We don't know from year to year all the time. We can kind of gauge and we can kind of see where we're at. We're obviously pretty old at corner. We're going to graduate 3 at corner. So we know we're going to have to replace some in the secondary. We can move some guys around there. Defensive line is always one of those positions. We play so many guys anymore on the defensive line. If you play 4 consecutive snaps on the defensive line, you're some sort of warrior in there. So we kind of change those guys out quite often. Linebackers with the departure of Miles Pierce, we're going to need one of those. We've got a couple of younger guys, but we've got to continue to build some guys there. Offensive line has been a position that has been young and kind of in transition over the last 2 years, so we've got to continue to beef that back up again. And then we've got to replace some A-backs and always take a quarterback.
Coach, we appreciate your time and the access that we have to you throughout the course of the season. Obviously, a couple of games left, but no more shows here. And we just want to say a big thanks for coming out each and every Wednesday. We know you got things to do, and it's a sacrifice for you. So thanks very much. Talk to you again real soon, okay?
Thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Coach Brent Thompson from here at Fiery Ron's Home Team Barbecue. And again, we want to thank everybody involved here, Aaron Siegel and his partners and the managers and servers that are in contact with us on a weekly basis. We'll see them again because it's a great place to eat, and we're going to hit all 3 of their locations. For head coach Brent Thompson, I'm Mike Legg. Mark Romness produced the broadcast for tonight. We say thanks to him. We say good night at this point, and go Bulldogs.